You may have heard the romantic story of a mermaid and a prince whose love transcends the boundaries of sea and land. But the genuine account of Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid is vastly different and considerably more disturbing. Though Andersen's version of a mermaid who abandons everything for romance has captivated readers for generations, few understand that this isn't merely a children's story. Hidden underneath lies something profoundly troubling: accounts of genuine sea creatures, old myths, and the personal anguish of its creator. Was Andersen simply telling a children's fairy tale, or was he secretly channeling his own suffering into myth? To understand the truth, we must venture beyond the surface past history itself into the dark, infinite depths of the ocean. Before we uncover the shocking true story, let's return to where it all began. Let's travel back to the origins of this legendary story, written by Hans Christian Andersen. Beneath the sea, where the waters are dark and eternal, there exists a kingdom untouched by the passage of time. This underwater world holds a certain tranquility where mermaids move like whispers through the abyss. In the deepest part of this ocean realm, perpetually shrouded in twilight, stands the residence of the Sea King. Its construction features coral and shells, which shimmer with every conceivable hue, reflecting light like trapped stars. Yet even in this underwater paradise, a young mermaid yearned for something greater. She spent her days in an underwater garden, where unusual plants curved like ghostly hands reaching upward. Her most treasured possession was a statue of a human boy. She fantasized about the world above, the feeling of sunlight on her skin, the sound of voices carried by wind, and the ability to walk on land and dance beneath the sky. Why did the realm above call to her so intensely? On her 15th birthday, she was permitted to travel upward and finally experience the realm she had only imagined. As she ascended, the water gradually became lighter and clearer. When she broke through the surface, she discovered a sky heavy with storm clouds and a restless sea stretching to the horizon. A magnificent vessel cut through the waves, decorated with lanterns resembling trapped fireflies. And there he was, a prince at the center of the celebration, his laughter ringing out as golden fireworks exploded overhead. In that instant, her destiny was determined. But the ocean is unforgiving. A violent storm suddenly struck the ship, tearing its hull and sending men into the depths. The little mermaid watched as the prince was thrown into the churning water. She pursued him, wrapped her arms around his sinking form, and dragged him to land. She remained concealed in the shallow water as dawn broke, and a young woman from a nearby sanctuary appeared. The prince awakened and smiled at her, never realizing the mermaid was his true rescuer. As the mermaid returned to the depths, her heart shattered. Transformed by this experience, the mermaid sought out her grandmother and posed a question: do humans live eternally? Her grandmother responded with laughter and explained that while mermaids can survive for 300 years before turning to sea foam and disappearing, humans possess eternal souls. When humans perish, their souls endure. This realization awakened a new yearning in the mermaid, not merely for the prince or even for love itself, but for an immortal soul. Desperate for assistance, she traveled to the ocean's most forbidden depths, past regions filled with grasping tentacles and violent whirlpools, to find the Sea Witch. The witch's dwelling was constructed from the remains of drowned sailors' ribs and skulls tangled in the roots of the ocean floor. Within this dark space sat the witch, with a water snake draped across her bosom and a bloated toad feeding directly from her mouth. The mermaid stood before her, trembling silently. The witch smiled and declared she understood what the mermaid desired. The witch revealed a black cauldron containing a glowing liquid potion and explained her terms: she would grant the mermaid legs to walk beside her prince. However, every step would bring excruciating pain as though treading on blades. Everyone who saw her would declare her the most beautiful creature they had ever witnessed, and she would move with unmatched grace, but each step would cost her agony. If the prince fell in love with her and married her, she would obtain a soul. However, if he chose another, she would perish, dissolving into sea foam and ceasing to exist. The witch demanded payment for this magic, the mermaid's voice. After hesitating, the mermaid surrendered. The witch took a blade and severed her tongue, removing her ability to speak. The mermaid received the glowing potion and departed. When the mermaid consumed the potion upon reaching the shore, it burned through her body like fire, reconstructing her. She awakened on the sand with fragile new legs resembling those of a newborn. The prince discovered her, welcomed her into his residence, and granted her a place to sleep at his doorway on a velvet cushion. He dressed her as a page and took her with him through the emerald forests where sunlight filtered through the trees. Yet he did not love her. He adored another, the woman from the sanctuary, the one he mistakenly believed had rescued him. When the time arrived for his wedding, he selected her. That evening, as the wedding vessel drifted beneath the stars, the mermaid sisters emerged from the depths. Their long hair had been shorn away, and they held a blade. The sea witch had exchanged this dagger for their hair. If the mermaid murdered the prince before sunrise, his blood would allow her to transform back into a mermaid and return home. The mermaid crept into the prince's chamber, dagger trembling in her hands. One motion could restore her former existence. But as she gazed at his sleeping face turned toward his bride, she acknowledged the truth: he had never been hers, and he never would be. As daybreak approached, she stepped onto the ship's edge, released the dagger, and let herself fall into the endless sea. Yet she did not cease to exist. Her form dissolved into foam, but instead of vanishing, she ascended into the sky. Luminous beings, daughters of the air, spoke her name. Because she had selected goodness and endured suffering while remaining virtuous, she had earned a different fate. If she spent the next 300 years performing compassionate acts for humanity, she would ultimately gain an immortal soul. She rose higher and higher until she disappeared into the wind, a dark, tragic tale filled with yearning and loss. The Little Mermaid has haunted readers for ages, but many fail to recognize that this account of silent anguish, unreciprocated feelings, and desperate longing to fit in mirrors the life of Hans Christian Andersen himself. Though a literary talent, Andersen remained perpetually an outsider, never truly welcome among the elite society he sought to join, nor in the hearts of those he cherished who did not reciprocate his affection. In 1836, when Andersen composed The Little Mermaid, he was devastated from heartbreak. For years, he had pursued Edvard Collin, the son of his benefactor. Although Edvard valued Andersen as a friend, he never returned his romantic interest. Andersen, however, harbored an intense obsession. He penned impassioned letters confessing his desires, comparing his longing to that for a beautiful Calabrian woman, and admitting his feelings mirrored those of a female admirer. He confessed to bringing a rose to bed, kissing it repeatedly, and positioning it beneath his pillow while thinking of Edvard. When Edvard announced his engagement, Andersen was shattered. He implored Edvard to reconsider, but Edvard rejected him coldly. Years afterward, in his own memoirs, Edvard recorded that he could not reciprocate this love and that his refusal caused the author tremendous suffering. Andersen channeled his anguish into his writing. In his story, an otherworldly mermaid from another realm falls for a prince, reconstructs her entire existence to be near him, sacrifices her voice, endures excruciating suffering, abandons all she has known, and in the conclusion, he chooses someone else. Andersen's suffering extended far beyond matters of the heart. Those who knew him considered him peculiar and unsettling, even his companions found him baffling. He possessed an extreme dread of premature burial, so intense that each night he positioned a note beside his sleeping area reading, "I am only apparently dead." In 1857, when Charles Dickens invited Andersen as a guest, Andersen remained 5 weeks past his welcome. When negative literary criticism arrived during his stay, Andersen collapsed onto Dickens' lawn, weeping uncontrollably for hours. Dickens never invited him again. Andersen's greatest torment, however, remained romantic. The most disturbing element of The Little Mermaid isn't merely her suffering, it's her enforced silence. The sea witch demands her voice in exchange for legs. Andersen himself, despite being a writer, never felt he could authentically express his emotions, particularly his romantic desires toward men. Like his mermaid, he endured his pain in silence. When the prince marries another, the mermaid faces a choice: end his life and return to the sea, or fade away. She selects death, though she doesn't entirely expire. Instead, she becomes an unseen presence, existing between realms, neither mermaid nor human, never truly belonging anywhere. Andersen harbored this same dread. Raised in a deeply religious culture, he questioned what would transpire with his soul. Would he attain acceptance in the afterlife, face eternal suffering, or, like his mermaid, simply vanish, forgotten? The mermaid's ultimate fate and ambiguous existence, perpetually striving to earn redemption, appears to echo Andersen's personal struggles: never truly recognized, never truly acknowledged, never truly loved in return. However, Andersen wasn't exclusively drawing from personal trauma. He was influenced by historical accounts, forgotten mythology, and an unsettling 19th-century narrative that may have profoundly shaped The Little Mermaid more than history has acknowledged. Friedrich de la Motte Fouque penned a romanticism piece titled Undine, first released in 1811. In this narrative, a knight named Hubertald becomes lost in an enchanted woodland. Seeking shelter, he finds the dwelling of an elderly fisherman and his wife, who treat him hospitably. However, their daughter, Undine, presents something unusual. She's as wild and unpredictable as the ocean itself, shifting between pleasant and harsh temperamentally. The elderly pair reveal a sorrowful history. Years before, their infant daughter vanished in the lake, seemingly claimed by the waters. That very evening, Undine materialized at their threshold as though the waves had delivered her. They've raised her without questioning this strange coincidence. When a deluge traps them, Hubertald and Undine develop romantic feelings and are married by a priest who washes ashore. Undine reveals her secret: she isn't human but a water entity. Her kind lack souls and moral understanding. Marriage to a mortal could grant her one. She fears abandonment, but he pledges his devotion. However, after returning to society, Hubertald becomes attracted to a noble woman named Bertalda. Sensing peril, Undine warns him never to criticize her near water, as this would awaken her aquatic relatives. Consumed by jealousy one evening, he harshly rebukes her beside a river. The water spirits execute their retaliation, pulling Undine into the depths. Andersen valued Fouqué's work and drew influence from German Romanticism. Though he never acknowledged Undine as an inspiration, the parallels are striking: water beings yearning for souls, heroines transforming their essence for affection only to face rejection. Many scholars view Undine as a predecessor to The Little Mermaid. Comparable narratives of aquatic entities exist in cultures worldwide. In the misty regions of Scotland and Ireland, fishermen told tales of Selkies, creatures capable of shedding their seal skins to appear as stunningly attractive humans. Yet these accounts were rarely romantic. A man who possessed a Selkie's discarded skin could trap her, forcing her into marriage. She would seem satisfied, bearing children and maintaining a household, but she remained perpetually watchful. The instant she recovered her skin, she would don it and vanish into the ocean, never returning. If Selkies were melancholic, sirens were ruthless. Long before Andersen's Mermaid surrendered her voice, seafaring populations feared the most terrible inhabitants of the sea, beings whose songs were impossible to ignore. According to ancient Greek mythology, sailors recounted legends of sirens inhabiting rocky shores, emitting melodious sounds that possessed an otherworldly quality. Those who heard their music became obsessed, compelled to hurl themselves into the sea and perish willingly. Yet confusion surrounded what sirens genuinely were. Original accounts describe them as part bird monsters with feathered appendages and talons rather than possessing fish tails. Only much later did sirens transform into the fish-tailed beings of subsequent legends, though their predatory nature remained unchanged. Though Greeks feared them, Nordic cultures harbored dread of even more horrifying beings. In the frigid northern seas, Norse sailors told of the Margigr, or sea giants, not the attractive mermaids of contemporary folklore, but monstrous entities that were part woman, part corpse, featuring tangled marine vegetation as hair and empty black eye sockets. Sailors believed these creatures would extract men from their vessels, dragging them beneath the waves, their screams absorbed by the ocean. But what if these weren't simply fabrications? What if evidence existed? In 1822, a bizarre being appeared on public display in London. Called a mermaid, its desiccated form was contorted into an eerie expression. This was no elegant siren or gorgeous sea maiden, it was disturbing and grotesque. Nevertheless, visitors arrived in abundance. Referred to as the Fiji Mermaid, it was purchased by American sea captain Samuel Barrett Eads from Japanese merchants who stated it originated from the eastern waters. Eads transported it to London, where it was displayed at the Turf Coffee House on St. James Street. For a modest fee, anyone could observe what purported to be evidence of the legendary mermaid mythology. The crowds were enormous. Each day, spectators pressed their faces to the glass, examining the desiccated form. Reactions differed: some shuddered, others examined it more closely, but all departed with the identical lingering inquiry: could it possibly be authentic? The early 19th century witnessed an intense fascination with the unusual, an era in which scientific understanding and mythology converged. It was a period of exploration, yet belief in legendary monsters persisted. It was during this very era that a youthful Hans Christian Andersen entered adulthood. Born in 1805, Andersen was merely 17 when the Fiji Mermaid created a sensation in London. Did he encounter it, hear accounts of it, or did the image embed itself in his consciousness, eventually transforming into something entirely new? By the time Anderson composed The Little Mermaid in 1836, the Fiji mermaid had already experienced a second life, this occasion on the American continent. The specimen did not remain confined to London but migrated across the Atlantic, setting the stage for a shift from deception to legend. In 1842, entertainment impresario P.T. Barnum obtained the Fiji mermaid, and the genuine trickery commenced. This wasn't actually a mermaid, it never had been. It was fabricated, a monkey's torso grafted onto a fish's tail, then desiccated, bent, and shellacked to achieve an appearance sufficiently lifelike to disturb observers. Barnum cared little about authenticity. He recognized a commercial opportunity. Though Barnum didn't possess the mermaid, he acquired it from Moses Kimball, a Boston museum proprietor. What followed was masterful promotion. Barnum constructed an elaborate backstory, asserting it had been captured near the Fiji Islands, authenticated by scientists, and presented definitive confirmation of mermaid existence. He dispatched letters to publications, impersonating scientists who had examined the artifact. He cultivated the legend prior to public revelation. By the time Barnum unveiled the Fiji mermaid at his American Museum in Manhattan, it had already become the most discussed oddity nationwide. Even after the fabrication was uncovered, the narrative persisted. Rather than diminishing belief, it strengthened people's desire to accept it, not because of Barnum's manipulation, but because humans have invariably perceived the waters as harboring something more. Every civilization speaks of inhabitants beneath the waves: Japan's Ningo, African Mami Wata, Russian Vodyanoi, Middle Eastern Jinn of the water. Certain are guardians, some are seducers, others are malevolent. All suggest one universal concept: something observes us from below. For countless generations, societies both feared and honored the waters, depositing presents currency, adornments, weaponry into rivers, reservoirs, and wells to appease the beings dwelling beneath. For ages, individuals have asserted witnessing them. Christopher Columbus himself documented in his journals sightings of 3 mermaids off what is currently the Dominican Republic. Yet what did he truly witness? Sailors spending prolonged periods isolated at sea frequently experience hallucinations. Their minds, craving aesthetic beauty, interpersonal connection, or something familiar, may manufacture elaborate illusions. A shimmering outline in the waves, the contour of a shadow, an entity half-glimpsed in moonlight. Perhaps it represented nothing beyond a manatee, an ordinary animal transformed by solitude and yearning into an extraordinary vision. Yet the accounts never diminish. In 2009, something peculiar transpired off the Israeli seaside city of Kiryat Yam. A mermaid-like creature emerged, possessing characteristics of both dolphin and female form. She would manifest at dusk, performing acrobatic maneuvers in the water before submerging. So many individuals provided testimony that municipal authorities issued a $1 million incentive for photographic evidence. Observers established themselves along the coastline, equipment prepared, and then silence. No documentation, no clarification, only an unanswered question: why do these narratives endure? Possibly because mermaids were never merely oceanic inhabitants. They embody the water itself. The sea offers both vitality and mortality. It captivates us through its entrancing rhythm, shifting illumination, and mysterious expanse. But it also destroys. The ocean remains unpredictable, tempting, and indifferent to human survival. And the mermaids that inhabit it share precisely these characteristics. The Little Mermaid stands as merely one beloved narrative concealing sinister truths beneath its surface.